felt so proud representing the Emirati woman and breaking the local female stereotype going in everyone's mind. The sky has never been a limit to me. Whether I dream to be in the sky or space, whatever I put my mind to, I will hopefully achieve. Teamwork is a very important part of search and rescue. Everything is possible if you put your heart and mind. No dream can be reached without challenges, and that's the beauty of it.
أهلا بكم من جديد سيداتي وسادتي. رحبوا معي بصانعة التأثير ملازم طيار الشيخة موزة بنت مروان المكتوم. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our next game changer, Captain Sheikha Mozah bint Marwan المكتوم.
Assalamu alaikum. When was the last time you did something for the first time? Do you remember? Was it taking your driving test? Graduating from university? Diving into the depth of the ocean? Traveling by plane? Do you remember how you felt? Were you scared, excited, anxious? Did you get that buzzing feeling inside you? I remember every single one of my first times, because that's what I'm seeking all the time. That feeling you get, the anticipation mixed with that uncertainty, that all culminates into an explosion of adrenaline. I'm in love with that feeling. It's always been that way since I was a child. I spent most of my time doing adrenaline-inducing activities, from horse riding at 5 a.m. to rock climbing in the afternoon, but not before a boxing session, trampolining, the occasional bungee jumping, and a little bit of co-steering from time to time. Which, for those of you who don't know, it's a daring and creative way of jumping off a cliff. This is the thing with adrenaline. The more you get, the more you want. And soon enough, I had outgrown my daily activities and I was looking for more. Skydiving has always been at the back of my mind, but the age restriction forced me to wait until I was 13 years old when I finally got to do my first jump. That memory will always stay with me. However, my first encounter with the sky happened a year earlier, at the age of 12. My brother and I went for a flying lesson in the UK. I will never forget. It was a hot summer's day. I was flying on the Robinson 22 with no doors attached. What I didn't know at the time was that day was going to change my trajectory and determine most of the choices that led me to where I am today. At the time, I had no idea about the theoretical aspect of aviation. I was just excited with the idea of learning to fly the aircraft. So I can somewhat say that the seed of aviation was planted on that day, and the passion grew with and within me as the years went by. I love the feeling of soaring between the clouds, seeing Earth from a different perspective. Every flight is different, and the adrenaline rush never ends. I had finally found my home. It was not long after that that I began exploring all the possible things one can do up in the sky. So I took up some aerobatic flying lessons, starting on the Bulldog, the Slingsby Firefly, and then my ultimate favorite, the Extra 300. I love how easy it is to flip this aircraft around and maneuver it. You see, this is the thing with flying aircrafts. There's endless things to learn, explore, or try. Have you ever heard of wing walking? This is when a human is willingly strapped to the airframe of an airborne aircraft while the pilot is performing aerobatic maneuvers. I took it up as a hobby, and before you know it, I was hooked. And just like all things I do, I wanted to know what was the limit. How many rolls could this aircraft do while I was standing on top of it? Well, the answer is 10, and it was officially done in 2013 as a Guinness World Record. I know it is bold. Maybe I make it sound easy. But you see, the thing with us girls is we always tell stories to ourselves. There is always some story, some version of a potential outcome turning around inside our heads, when we should really be testing reality. If we sit there and wait for our dreams to materialize, that day will never come. Many of us are really great at creating boundaries within our minds, answering questions in our heads before they're asked out loud. I also had those stories in my mind. They're called limiting beliefs, and I knew I had to stop them. My story was that I thought I will never be able to study abroad alone, and I could not accept that. So I took the courage and I asked the question out loud to my parents. And what I got back was an amazing amount of support and encouragement. Imagine if I let the story in my head silently dictate the outcome. You see, us Emiratis are probably the luckiest citizens to be part of this great nation. Thanks to our leaders are way ahead in their vision and support with gender equality. Thanks to His Highness, Sheikha Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, and his vision, women in the UAE are not only supported, but offered all sorts of opportunities and access in the workplace, together with a stimulating environment to thrive. For this, I'm grateful and proud to be an Emirati. And so my parents supported me fully in my intention to study abroad alone in the pursuit of a formal qualification as a commercial pilot. My father actually said, if your mother is okay with it, then I am too. And she was on board. The only condition, I had to pass my GCSEs before I could go. The dream was to join Oxford Aviation, and I knew I was in for a challenging time. The day finally came, my first day at Oxford. I felt ready to embark on the start of a new chapter in my life. My parents were there to see me off. I still remember the look on their face, proud and excited, but maybe a little bit nervous, not wanting their daughter to grow up so fast. By this point, I had turned 17 years old, and I still had to have a parental guardian form signed in order to join. I was the youngest student there. I'll be honest, the first couple of months were tough. I was in a class filled with university graduates and students with a lot of previous experience. It was a massive jump for me. It took a while to adjust, not only to the workload, but finding a way to study that was suitable for me. The air transport pilot license course requires you to do a lot of independent studying, and that can be challenging as it requires discipline and focus. My parents were there to support me just enough to get me through. I found the theoretical part of the training the most difficult. I think most pilots would agree with me. It was during my ground school period that I decided to join Emirates Airlines, a decision that came one day during one of those intense home studying sessions. I thought to myself, I can't be putting this much effort and then going back home with a commercial pilot's license. It felt purposeless. I felt the need to push myself and stretch my boundaries to achieve more. And so I called my parents. I told them about my decision of joining Emirates Airlines. They were nothing but supportive. During the 2-week break from ground school, I began the onboarding process that would lead me later to joining Emirates Airlines. Practical flight training in the States was an amazing experience, waking up to beautiful sunrises and flying at night. The flying came much easier than all of the ground school. I was in my element, but there was still a lot to learn. After completing the first phase of training, the most anticipated day finally came. The first major step in achieving the pilot's license. It's the moment every pilot dreams of, the first solo flight. I woke up with so much energy and excitement, driving into the flight academy, admiring the beautiful sunrise of Arizona. I could not believe how far I'd come in pursuing my dream. I went for the pre-flight briefing with my instructor. We walked out onto the ramp together. He was going to stand outside and watch me do my first solo flight. I got into the aircraft, methodically went through all the pre-flight checks out loud, just like I do when I fly with him. It all felt quite normal until I got to the runway threshold. And then I felt a major rush of adrenaline and excitement. The aircraft finally lifted off the ground, and what I felt was something very difficult to describe. Alone in the sky, I finally did this. The sound of the PA-28 engine, the occasional calls on the radio. It felt surreal. I felt so proud in achieving this. After completing the first phase of training, after that, it was just about completing the different stages in order to achieve the commercial pilot's license. Instrument rating is one of those essential steps that took place in the UK. This is where we had to apply our ground school knowledge to real flying scenarios. We had to fly in bad weather, in and out of clouds. I enjoyed every moment of it. I had to learn to believe in myself, to face check flights with a positive attitude. There was always something to learn, like being humble and accepting my mistakes as learning opportunities. My final instrument rating was done by Captain Tim Orchard, an ex-Concorde captain, and I thankfully got a first-time pass. I was ready to fly back to do my type rating on the Boeing 777. Every time we fly a new aircraft, we have to go through ground school first to learn all about this new aircraft. And for us pilots, ground school is a lot like being grounded. We're itching every second of it to go back up in the sky and just fly. And so the day finally came, my first passenger flight, EK 901 to Amman. My mother, who had always promised me she would be on that first flight, not only kept her promise, but came along with friends and created the most amazing atmosphere. Maybe that's the reason I wasn't nervous. I was proud and excited. The adrenaline was so high. I'm really lucky my family supported me all along the way, and for this, I'll forever be grateful. When I look back and reflect on the journey so far, even with the support, it was not easy. I did have difficult times, times when I was missing home, times when I could not see a positive outcome, self-doubt that had to be overcome. It was equally a physical and mental challenge, like having to adjust my body to flying at different times of the day and night. But I always had that feeling of not wanting to be average. I wanted to prove myself. The truth is, I may have actually had it more difficult than the guys at some point, and that was okay. I always faced such situations with a positive attitude. Many of my instructors were actually tough with me because they wanted to make sure all the grades I got were well earned. It is no surprise to anyone that throughout this journey, I have noticed that the number of women in the aviation industry is very low compared to the number of men. It is also interesting that one of my trainers, a pilot with more than 30 years experience, once told me that throughout his career, he had trained a total of 7 women, including me, and that all showed competence, commitment, attitude, and skills superior to the men he trained. It came along as a genuine reflection, not flattery. Maybe that's because we always feel we have to work twice as hard to prove our worth. As statistics show, women in the it is a very male-dominated industry. However, this is slowly changing. We are slowly getting more women to join. Given my experience and my love for it, I felt compelled to do something tangible to accelerate the growth rate of women entering the industry. Last October, I established the Women in Aviation Association, Sheikha, to increase the female ratio and promote awareness. The aviation industry is a vast and exciting playing field for many professions, not just for pilots. And through Sheikha, we want to show the community the many opportunities in which our young female professionals can flourish in. Whether a lawyer, a doctor, a pilot, or an engineer, the aviation industry can foster and nurture women. Sheikha is willing to give direction and support to all those women willing to join the aviation industry. I personally would like to see more young women, more young girls be made aware of the opportunities they have going forward. Our leaders have demonstrated so much faith in us. Now it is our turn to make them proud and show them that the UAE women can represent them locally and internationally. Sheikha is where I see my passion and my contribution tangibly growing. However, I'm still at the start of my journey, and I feel I have a duty too, towards my country. And so when the opportunity presented, I set my eyes on a new goal, joining Dubai Police Air Wing. Thanks to the support of our leaders, and especially His Highness Sheikh Hamdan bin Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, I recently graduated as first lieutenant pilot of the Dubai Police Air Wing, becoming the first female pilot in the police in the UAE. And so I had to go back to ground school again and flight training in Horizon Academy in Al Ain. I did my Augusta 139 type rating in Abu Dhabi, and then went through my military training back in Dubai Police Academy. I am proud and extremely grateful to be serving my country, being part of Dubai Police. This is a very rewarding role where I get to help the community in a job that I love and I'm so passionate about. My duties range from patrolling to search and rescue missions. Every flight is a new experience where I get to learn on the job all the time. I can't believe that something that started out as a hobby turned my life around in such a meaningful way. I hope that my journey could serve as inspiration and encouragement to all young females still searching for a path, and show them that there is still space for women in serving our country. So let me ask you again now, when was the last time you did something for the first time? I hope you will always want to try new things and explore more, because this enriches us as women and as humans and as members of the civil society. I am only 23 years old. And I'm still at the start of my journey. I hope I never lose this thirst for adventure. Flying has given me the greatest gift of all and the greatest wisdom for being able to trust in myself when I'm up at 39,000 feet above the ground. There are no limits we can't defy in the pursuit of our dreams if we all have what in Arabic we call al-azima wal-israr, determination and persistence. Thank you.